In the spring of 2003, in rural Atmore, Alabama, 31-year-old nurse Melinda Wall McGhee vanished under chilling circumstances. She had just returned from a night shift at a nursing home in Bay Minette and arrived home at around 8 a.m. on March 24th. Her husband, Troy McGhee, was away at work. Their children were in the care of a babysitter, and a stepchild was off at a dental appointment. Melinda spoke by phone to her husband Troy and to her mother at 8:30 a.m. That would be the last confirmed contact anyone has ever had with her. Later that afternoon around 4 p.m, Troy returned home to a terrifying sight. His wife was gone and their house bore signs of a violent struggle. Melinda's car was still parked near her home, keys locked inside. Her purse and cell phone remained inside the residence. Though there was blood and evidence that someone had resisted, investigators found no clear indication that a homicide had occurred inside the house. From the outset, authorities presumed foul play, that Melinda had been attacked and abducted, likely while asleep, given how abruptly everything seemed to unfold. Over the years, her disappearance has drawn attention to possible suspects, among them serial killers like Derek Todd Lee and Jeremy Brian Jones, though no definitive link has ever been proven. In this video, we're going to explore the many parts of this haunting case, from the timeline, to the suspects, to the leads, theories, and the unresolved mysteries that continue to surround Melinda's fate. Let's go right back to the start. Once Troy McGhee realised that something was terribly wrong, he immediately alerted authorities. When law enforcement arrived, they found a house disturbed, evidence of a violent struggle, and bloodstains in the bedroom. Despite this, there were no obvious signs that Melinda had been killed inside the home. No body, no weapon left behind, and no clear indication of where the crime may have continued. Investigators believed that she was assaulted and abducted, possibly while asleep. Melinda's vehicle was still parked near the house, her keys locked inside, and both her purse and cell phone were left inside the home. This pointed to a scenario where she would have no ability to willingly leave, or at least none to drive away or contact someone from outside. Her personal items were left behind, suggested that she did not expect to be gone for long, or did not have control over the situation. Search teams were promptly deployed to surrounding rural areas. The McGhee home was at the end of a dead-end dirt road, with only a few nearby houses. Investigators also pursued leads pointing to nearby vacant lots, gravel pits, and other secluded locations. One lead took searchers to a gravel pit near Atmore. Cadaver dogs, sonar equipment, and multiple agencies combed through the area, including septic tanks, but no human remains or evidence of Melinda's presence was ever found. Over the years, the case has passed through many hands. Local law enforcement, the state, and federal agencies have all had involvement at times. The family also faced harrowing uncertainty. There are periods when investigators hoped for a breakthrough, but so often the lead would fizzle. Social media and true crime forums later reflected on that frustration, echoing the sentiment that no new developments had been released to the public in 15 years. From early on, investigators and amateur sleuths alike began eyeing every possible suspect. Though no one has ever been conclusively tied to Melinda's disappearance, two names dominate the speculation: Derek Todd Lee and Jeremy Brian Jones. Derek Todd Lee is a notorious serial killer from Louisiana, convicted of multiple murders, with suspicions of involvement in many more murders. Some supporters of this theory argue that Lee's known travel patterns, combined with similarities in the way he murders, could link him to Melinda's case. However, skeptics note a significant geographic challenge. Atmore, Alabama lies roughly 250 miles from Lee's known activity base in Baton Rouge, making it far less likely, though not impossible, that he would travel that far to commit murder. The other suspect, Jeremy Brian Jones, has a somewhat stronger circumstantial connection. He was later convicted for murder in Mobile, Alabama, and is suspected in several other crimes across southern states. Reddit users have pointed out that Jones's pattern of activity aligns more plausibly with Melinda's disappearance. Still, no evidence has ever definitively connected Jones to Melinda's case, and investigators examined his records, but nothing has emerged publicly confirming his involvement. Some online theorists also suggest the possibility that Melinda might have known her assailant, or at least someone local, and that lack of forced entry might support this theory. In short, Lee and Jones remain the most discussed suspects, but neither has been charged or publicly tied to Melinda's disappearance. Their candidacy hinges mostly on pattern matching and proximity, not concrete forensic evidence. To understand the chilling nature of Melinda McGhee's disappearance, it's crucial to reconstruct her final known hours. On March 24, 2003, she finished a long night shift at a nursing home in Bay Minette and drove the half-hour back home to Atmore. She arrived around 8 AM, parking her car near the house. Around 8:30 AM, she made 2 phone calls, one to her husband Troy and another to her mother. Both conversations seemed normal. There was no sign of distress and she sounded like she was winding down from a heavy shift, ready for rest. After that, Melinda seemingly disappeared into silence. Between 8:30 AM and 4 PM, when Troy returned home from work, no one is confirmed to have seen or spoken to her. This 7.5-hour window is the critical period where investigators believe the attack occurred. Given that she had just come off a night shift, many theorized that she went to sleep, making her especially vulnerable. When Troy arrived in the afternoon, he found disturbing signs, blood evidence, indications of violent struggle, and Melinda's car, purse and cell phone all still there. The front door was unlocked and the keys were found locked inside the car. An unusual detail that continues to puzzle both family and investigators. What makes the timeline even more haunting is how quickly her life seems to have been interrupted. In less than 8 hours, she went from a routine morning homecoming to being violently removed from her home without leaving a single confirmed trace behind. From the very beginning, the investigation into Melinda McGhee's disappearance was treated as a likely abduction. Local, state and federal agencies all became involved, and the search efforts were launched across the rural landscape of Atmore. Cadaver dogs, helicopters and sonar were deployed to scour gravel pits, swamps and septic tanks near the McGhee home. Despite these extensive efforts, no physical trace of Melinda has ever been found. Authorities examined the crime scene very closely. Blood evidence suggested a struggle, but investigators were careful to state that there was no proof she was killed inside the home. This distinction gave her family hope, but it also created a frustrating mystery. If she was taken alive, where did she go? And who had the means to remove her without detection? Tips flooded in over the years. Some pointed to serial killers passing through the region. Others suggested local suspects who may have known Melinda personally. But time after time, each lead fizzled out, either disproven or too weak to follow. Family members described the agonizing cycle of hope and disappointment that came with every new tip. Despite the lack of results, law enforcement has never closed the case. Periodic searches have continued even years later, with officers returning to old locations armed with new technology. Yet every revisit ends the same way: no sign of Melinda and no breakthrough in the evidence. As the months turned into years, Melinda McGhee's case has never truly left the community's heart. Local news outlets in Alabama covered the story extensively in the early days, and even today, anniversaries of her disappearance often bring renewed attention. Vigils have been held in her memory, where family and friends gather to pray for answers and to make sure Melinda's name is never forgotten. Her family has been at the centre of these efforts. Troy McGhee, her husband, consistently urged authorities to never give up. Melinda's mother, too, has become a determined advocate, speaking to the media to remind the world that her daughter was not just another missing person statistic. Each year that passes without resolution weighs heavily, but the family has clung to hope, supported by their community. Community members describe Melinda as a devoted nurse, a loving wife and a caring mother. Her disappearance felt personal to Atmore, a crime that shattered not just one household, but the sense of safety in a small rural town, where most neighbours knew each other. The idea that someone could walk into her home in broad daylight and leave without a trace was, and still is, deeply unsettling. Despite the lack of progress, Melinda's story continues to circulate in true crime spaces online. From forums to podcasts, people who never knew her personally have taken up her cause, re-examining old evidence, suspects, theories, and hoping that a fresh perspective might uncover the missing piece. Here are just some of the public's responses. I remember Melinda being such a sweet and funny girl. We worked together at the Ponderosa, and she would sometimes babysit my daughter when I was working and she had the day off. We would have graduated college together as RNs. Saw her in the college bookstore just days before she disappeared. I think of her often and pray that she is found for her family's sake. Another person saying, I worked with Melinda for several years and we both went elsewhere. I met her in Walmart on the Friday morning before she disappeared, and we stood and chatted for a long time. Melinda was so excited about life. She told me about her boys, her husband, and she was back in school and would be doing clinicals in the hospital I was working at. We had such a lovely conversation, and she was her super bubbly self and so happy. So much promise was taken away that day, and those responsible need to be held responsible. But unfortunately, with no arrests and very little physical evidence, theories about what happened to Melinda McGhee have multiplied over the years. One of the most discussed possibilities is that she was the victim of a stranger abduction. Her rural home was isolated, making her an easy target for someone who might have been watching her routines. Some theorists argue this could explain why her car and belongings were left untouched. The attacker only wanted Melinda. Another theory suggests local involvement. Some forum users point out the lack of forced entry, wondering if she might have opened the door willingly to someone she knew. Others speculate that whoever took her may have had knowledge of her schedule, striking just after she returned home from her night shift, when she was likely exhausted and vulnerable. The more sensational theories revolve around serial killers, namely Derek Todd Lee and Jeremy Bryan Jones. While neither man has been proven to be in Atmore on the day Melinda vanished, both were active in the region during that time frame, and both had brutal histories of violence against women. The idea that one of them could have crossed paths with Melinda remains tantalizing, but the distance and lack of evidence continue to cast doubt. There is also the possibility that her case is tied to another unsolved crime in the area, though investigators have never confirmed any link. Reddit discussions often raise this point, with users comparing details of other disappearances and murders across Alabama and nearby states, trying to find a pattern. Ultimately, every theory circles back to the same tragic truth. There are no definitive answers, no closure, and no justice. More than 20 years have passed since March 24, 2003, and still the fate of Melinda Wall McGhee remains unknown. No suspects have ever been charged, no body has ever been recovered, and the case lingers as one of Alabama's most haunting mysteries. For her family, each day without answers is another day of grief without closure. She was a young nurse, a wife, a mother, someone simply coming home after a long night of work. In a matter of hours, she was taken from her own home, leaving behind only questions, bloodstains, and heartbreak. The lack of resolution has made her case a rallying point for many who follow unsolved crimes. Her name appears in online forums, true crime podcasts, and databases like the Charlie Project, where strangers still revisit the details in hopes that someone, somewhere, someday might notice something that was overlooked. For her community, Melinda is remembered as not just a cold case, but as a human whose story deserves an ending. The unanswered questions push us to reflect on how many families continue to wait for the truth, caught between hope and despair. If you know anything about the disappearance of Melinda Wall McGhee, contact the Escambia County Sheriff's Office in Alabama. Even the smallest piece of information could help bring peace to her family and justice for Melinda. We can only hope and pray that someday the family will have some closure and get the answers they deserve.